Good afternoon, and thanks for being part of the 24th annual Break the Silence, Break the Cycle Luncheon, all to benefit the Domestic Violence and Child Advocacy Center for Northeastern Ohio. I'm Ed Flash Ferentz, the Flash from the Jeff and Flash days at the old Buzzard Morning Zoo, the Gloria days of rock radio in Cleveland. Thank you. There were some good years there, no doubt about that. I still do some radio. I have a show called America's Workforce, which airs on WERE from 4 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. And we get into a lot of issues concerning the community, this being one of them. I also, for the last 17 years, completed the Cleveland Municipal Court as a public information officer, and we deal there with issues like what we're going to address here today. Most importantly, I'm a husband and I'm a father. In fact, my wife and one of my daughters here today, Stephanie and Deb, will be married 30 years in March. And I am a father of 4 daughters. And I say that, there are some challenges with that, no doubt. One left at home. But I've been involved with the Domestic Violence Center for a number of years. I had the opportunity to MC this event for several of those years. And the statistic that really took my breath away was the one where 1 in 4 women sometime in their lifetime, 1 in 4 would be a victim of domestic violence. Now that's a statistic, and statistics are just that, they're numbers, until you put a face to them. And being a father of 4 daughters, I often think to myself, well, could that be Joy? Could that be Jackie? Could be my Rachel or my Stephanie? That's when it hits home. That's when it really hits home. And you're going to hear stories about hitting home here today at Windows on the River. That is what took my breath away. That's why I get involved. That's why every one of you gets involved. And you know what? Because of you being here today, buying that ticket, and you're going to be involved in a couple of fundraising things that we do here today, we're moving the needle in the right direction. So you know what? Give yourselves a round of applause just for being here today and being part of the collective action to put an end to domestic violence. For 40 years now, the DVCAC has been serving victims of domestic violence as well as child abuse. The mission is to empower individuals, educate the community, and advocate for justice to end domestic violence as well as child abuse. At this time, I'd like to introduce the president of the DVCAC's Board of Directors, Polly Fury. Polly?
Thanks, Ed. Good afternoon, everyone. What a great crowd. Thanks so much for coming out. On behalf of DVCAC, I'd like to thank you all for being here today. I'm so honored to be associated with this incredible agency and the staff and the organization behind the work this agency does. Give a round of applause for the staff. They are so amazing. Thank you. I'm currently serving my 2nd term as board president for DVCAC. I've seen a lot of growth in this agency. When I started on the board, it was a little less than a $2 million budget. Today, after a merger with Bellflower and continued growth, our budget's approaching $5 million. And our client base has increased considerably. Our outreach has increased considerably, all due to the great work of our staff and board. We appreciate your support in the challenge towards ending domestic violence and child abuse and building a safer community for everyone. Our work isn't easy. Yet it's so essential to ensure that victims have the tools to triumph over trauma. We would like to acknowledge right now the members of the Board of Directors that are here today. If you would please stand. An awesome and dedicated board. Thank you all. We also wish to acknowledge and thank our Hope and Healing sponsors, the Cleveland Browns, Forest City, Sherwin-Williams, University Hospital Rainbow Babies and Children, the Cleveland Clinic, and Burns Industrial Equipment. At this time, I'd like to introduce Reverend Dr. Moore, Chief Executive Officer and President of Passages, Inc., and a former board member of DVC. Dr. Moore will give our invocation. Thank you.
Let us pray. God of peace, there are homes in our community where women and children and men live in fear of violence, and far too many people who do not experience your peace. Their homes have become places of danger and pain. Right now, there are far too many who live under the dark weight of fear and violence in their homes. Help us to help them develop the strength to overcome. Loving God, we gather here today to remember those who are affected by violence and abuse, and for whom we are genuinely concerned. We come with our request to ask that you hear our prayer. Empower us to stand up for those who experience challenges. With your guidance and blessing, we can break the silence and break the cycle of violence. Open us up to the problems both in our own communities and in neighborhoods surrounding us. Give us the strength and fortitude to move forward courageously, reaching those who are challenged. Be with us today, loving God. Comfort us, but not protect us from the work that needs to be done. Bless the leadership and staff of the Domestic Violence and Child Advocacy Center, its volunteers, first responders, and supporters. Bless our meal, and when we leave this gathering, may we be more committed to eradicating domestic violence in our lifetime. We ask you for your strength, your courage, and your power to share the convictions, the compassion to comfort those who have been abused, the wisdom to plant seeds that encourage people to think and ponder and do something about these serious issues. Watch over with care those who are violated and those who strive to do your work in your name. And the people of God said, amen.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Our theme for our luncheon this year is Trauma to Triumph. We give victims a voice. We strive to make lives whole again. We help victims of domestic violence and child abuse move through trauma to triumph. We are highlighting our Justice System Advocacy Program today, which is a team of 14 staff that work tirelessly every day to serve the needs of the victims in our community. The Justice System Advocates at the DVCAC served 2,375 men, women, and children during fiscal year 2017. I think that deserves a round of applause. The Justice System Advocates work in 12 courts in Cuyahoga County, escorting victims and their children through the legal system and assisting victims with reaching toward the justice that they deserve. We, of course, need your support to help cover the essential costs of the vital programming, and we've set a goal of raising $20,000 today. and we'd like to surpass that. Maybe we can go to 25,000. Anytime during this luncheon, here's the deal. You can text your cell phone. Make a difference by texting your donation. Real simple. Text the word healing. Healing to 56512. Got that? Text the word healing to 56512. Follow the directions on the screen and then hit send. If you wish to write a check, there are envelopes on the table and our staffers will be willing to collect the envelopes. As the donations come in via the text, you will see the thermometer heat up over here on the screen. So, here's the idea today. We want that thermometer to go through the roof. What do you think? Okay? Now you have cards on the table, 10 cards, that have the instructions for your reference. If you wish to use a credit card, the staff can assist you, no problem there. We also have some fabulous raffle prizes and tickets. Now those are $10 each or 6 for $50. The drawing, that's going to take place at the end of the program today. Okay, got that? Healing 56512. All right, now it is my pleasure to introduce Steve Dettelbach, Honorary Chair for the Break the Silence Luncheon. Steve has spent his career working to make our community as well as our families safer, much safer. As a prosecutor for more than 2 decades, including almost 7 years as U.S. Attorney for Northern Ohio. How about this one? He's never lost a federal criminal trial. I would hire this guy. Steve has been a longtime supporter for the DVCAC's mission, so let's all welcome Steve Dettelbach today.
Thanks. All right. As a Cleveland kid who reveled in the glory days of Cleveland rock radio, that is an honor to be introduced by the Flash. Although I was more of a Kid Leo guy myself, but I'm just saying. I want to thank you all for being here today, and I want to say a couple special thanks to both Carol Pruitt and to the leadership staff and the board of the DVCAC. The incredible work that you do day in and day out is something that most people in this community, too many people in this community, don't know enough about. And we all owe you an incredible debt for your dedication and your leadership to make our community and the people in it safer. So thank you. I also want to say a special word about Linda Johannick, who has served as the leader of this organization and in the organization for 2 decades. So much work has happened during the time that Linda has led this group. So much progress has been made, and yet so much yet still needs to be done. If you look at the progress that has been made, if you look at the things that have happened, there's no way you can count through the accomplishments, both spiritual, legal, brick and mortar, financial, in every area. We have made progress in terms of the things that need to happen in this community. And much of that is due to Linda and her staff. So I want to say a special word of thanks to Linda today. Linda, thank you so much for what you've done for this community. And if you talk about things that have changed and things that have not changed, as somebody who went into law enforcement over 20-some years ago, I think there have been things that have changed and things that have not. The things that have changed for the better and I'm saying this as a word of thanks to the law enforcement officers in our community and in this state who sacrifice so much and are so courageous. If you look at the things that have changed, the way that law enforcement now understands and treats the survivors and victims of domestic violence, I don't think many of us would have been able to say 25 years ago that we would have made so much progress. The police who protect us are so sensitive and so tuned into these issues, and that has been a major change. What has not changed is the risk that those officers, those men and women face in trying to protect us. Every call, every door knock, every single night when they go out, they risk everything to try and make our community safer. And as if we needed a reminder of that, just this week, down the road in Girard, Ohio, one of our finest young men made the ultimate sacrifice in order to try to protect our community. And I would just say this, we cannot and should not ever stop saying out loud and acknowledging the incredible work that the law enforcement officers in the Cleveland Division of Police and all over are doing to help on this issue. We owe you everything, so thank you very, very much for your work. So 1 out of every 3 women and 1 out of every 4 men will experience the horror of domestic violence in their lifetime. And that's something that should be repeated over and over. But if you want to understand what that means in Ohio, it means that in Ohio in 2016 alone, 78,633 incidents of domestic abuse were reported to law enforcement. Let that sink in. 78,633 incidents were reported. And tragically, 115 of those incidents were fatalities. Think about that. In 1 year alone, 115 men and women lost their lives to this problem. We've made progress, but we have so much more progress yet ahead of us. Currently, of course, Ohio has over 100 domestic violence facilities. However, there are many, many counties in this state that don't even have one facility that is dedicated to treating and protecting the victims of domestic violence. Some places, we're lucky in Cleveland, and some places in this state, victims of domestic violence have to travel a long distance under difficult circumstances to get the protection and help they need. And we need to change that, right? And people are uncomfortable about talking about this, but of course, as you know, the presence of a firearm during a domestic violence incident increases the risk of homicide by 500%. And as somebody who respects the right of individuals to possess firearms but understands there need to be limits, we need to focus as a community and a state in making sure that people who we know already are inclined to commit acts of domestic violence do not have access to firearms. This is basic stuff. It protects law enforcement, it protects people who are victims, and we need to get it done. And of course, there's other things that we can and should talk about doing in order to help the people who are victims in these cases. Of course, what we want to make sure doesn't happen is that people aren't victimized yet again as they go through the legal system. That's, of course, what the DVCAC and your work is all about. But we need to make sure that survivors of domestic violence have access to housing. Make sure that their unemployment compensation isn't cut off. Make sure that landlords don't come down on them during this most difficult and vulnerable time in their lives. And make sure that realtors aren't discriminating against victims of domestic violence. There's legislation in Michigan that would do all these things. We should think about doing that in Ohio as well. And we need to make sure that the Victims Fund, which remains a stalwart item of protection that we can use to help all these organizations in the state, that it remains healthy and that we remain dedicated as stewards of that fund to protecting the victims of domestic violence. And lastly, we need to continue the effort to keep talking with each other. So much that has changed because we're now willing to go outside our comfort zone. Law enforcement officers and prosecutors aren't just talking anymore about how do I win the case. They are also talking with people who are treating and representing people who are survivors about how do we make sure that the victim in this case isn't re-victimized. We're talking with people who are in the medical community, who are in the treatment community, the counseling community, about how to make this a safer and better system. And we need to keep doing that. Because although we've made progress, as the theme of this luncheon demonstrates, there is more progress yet to be made. Progress is never easy. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. But looking out at you in this audience today, all of you, I know that if you remain dedicated to this, we can attack, reduce, and hopefully someday, maybe, come close to eliminating the scourge of domestic violence. Thank you very much.
911, operator 901. Where's the emergency?
127 Brymere.
Okay, what's going on there?
I'd like to order a pizza for delivery.
Ma'am, you've reached 911. This is an emergency line.
Large with half pepperoni, half mushroom.
You know you've called 911. This is an emergency
Do you
line.
know how long it'll be?
Okay, ma'am, is everything okay over there? Do you have an emergency or not?
Yes.
And you're unable to talk because...
Right.
Okay, is there someone in the room with you? Just say yes or no.
Yes.
Okay, it looks like I have an officer about a mile from your location. Are there any weapons in your house?
No.
Can you stay on the phone with me?
No. See you soon. Thank you.
I wish I was in school. If only I had a math test today. I'll stay after class. I'll clean the chalkboard. I wish I was in school.
School ends, but free lunches for your kids don't have to. Find your local food bank at feedingamerica.org/summer meals for help.
For an in-depth look at local news and events happening in our great city, tune in to TV20's Weekly News Wrap-Up, where you get the whole story. Daily at 7 a.m., noon, and 6 p.m. Only right here on TV20. TV20, we are Cleveland.
Steve Dettelbach, thank you so much. We're at 89.25 right now. I like that. And we appreciate some very, very kind donations. We like to honor the people that made this luncheon possible. 3 people that have come together to plan this year's event. We want to thank them for their initiative, their hard work, and of course their commitment to making this year's luncheon a huge success. Betsy Burns, Karen Teig, and Terry Hannah Ween. There you go. All 3, having lost a good friend to domestic violence, Betsy, Karen, and Terry have worked to promote education as well as awareness of family violence and have supported the DVCAC's mission. And now I'd like to have them come up. We have a special presentation here. There, face the audience. Let's give them a round of applause. Okay. All right. And now I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, and that is Melissa Dome-Hill, a survivor, an advocate, as well as an international speaker. Her story has been featured on national as well as international television and magazines. Let's give a round of applause to Melissa Dome-Hill.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Thank you. Hello, can you hear me on here? Okay, thank you. Just get settled here for a moment. So good afternoon. It's afternoon now. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. It is truly an honor for me to be here in Cleveland with you all, coming from my hometown of Clearwater, Florida, where I was born and raised. So yeah, it's pretty cold outside. But I'm truly honored to be here, and thank you all for joining as well in support of DVCAC. People start to heal the moment they feel heard, and I am truly grateful that my voice is heard where I work as an advocate for an organization called Hands Across the Bay in Clearwater, Florida. I get to speak in high schools about my story, and then I also get to work one-on-one with survivors and help them rebuild their lives. I am truly grateful my voice has been heard in headlines across the world. In 48 Hours, Investigative Discovery, People Magazine, BBC News, Fox News, CNN News. I've spoken and shared my story in the UK, Japan, Germany, South America, and Australia. But none of that matters, because the only spotlight that matters right now is the one that we are shining on the dark and hidden issue of domestic violence. I am truly grateful to be invited by the DVCAC to be able to share my story and raise awareness of the epidemic of domestic violence in our country. So thank you for having me. Over the next few minutes, I'm just going to first explain a little bit about what domestic violence is all about. Then I'm going to talk about my personal experience of overcoming horrific abuse, and I want to show you how you can help join us to end this dark and hidden but completely preventable issue. Most importantly of all, I hope to inspire you today. And again, tell you how you can join us to end domestic violence from wreaking havoc across our country. So about 5.5 years ago, it was January 2012, and I survived a horrific knife attack at the hands of my ex-boyfriend. I was stabbed 32 times by a 6'4" manipulative man. 19 stabs were in my head, neck, and face, and the rest were in my arms and hands in my defense as I fought for my life. I thank God every day I am not another forgotten statistic, and I am truly grateful for a chance to share my testimony and speak for those who no longer have a voice. Growing up, I was very smart. I was a straight A student. I received good grades in pretty much all subjects, but the one lesson that I never received was that about dating violence or domestic violence. I do not blame anyone but my attacker for what happened, but hindsight is 20/20, and knowledge is power. Teens need to be taught and be given the skills on how to properly navigate a breakup and what the warning signs of violence are, what the cycle of abuse is all about. My school didn't have the DVCAC's life-saving prevention program come in to teach me as a teenager about the warning signs of cycle or how dangerous abusive relationships can be. I didn't know that October was Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I definitely didn't know that I wasn't alone in my experience. This solidifies the importance of why we are all gathered here today, and solidifies the reasons of why we must raise our voices, raise funding, and raise awareness, because together is how we can end this epidemic. Even as a bystander, not speaking out is why this violence will continue to grow and wreak havoc. I would never want to go through what I went through again, but with where I am today, I wouldn't change it. And that is because I feel that God saved my voice to be the one to deliver this message to teens across the country. God gave me a voice when I did not have one. He helped me piece by piece restore my life. And it's just kind of overwhelming sometimes, but I stand here before you now as a survivor on a mission. Not only will I survive, but I will thrive, and I encourage others to join me. So I want to talk to you a little bit about just domestic violence in general. Domestic violence does not discriminate. It can happen to individuals of any race, religion, culture, or age. It occurs in a devastating cycle, and it's a gradual process. It usually escalates over time. And it occurs in a devastating cycle, one that can cross generations and last a lifetime until someone stands up to break the cycle in their family or in their relationships. Abuse comes in many different forms. People think of domestic violence as strictly physical abuse. So if you're not getting hit, punched, slapped, then you're not being abused. But not all wounds are visible, but all are painful. Domestic violence can not only be physical, but it can be verbal, emotional, mental, financial, sexual. The frequency and severity from one relationship to the next can vary dramatically, but the one constant component that remains is a partner's desire for power and control over the other. And this control can come in many different forms. It is important to recognize that alcohol does not make somebody abusive, or negative childhood experience does not make somebody abusive. It is strictly the desire to have control in any form. Domestic violence doesn't care if you are rich or poor. Domestic violence doesn't care if you are educated or not at all. Victims of abuse can be doctors and lawyers, but they can also be high school dropouts or stay-at-home mom. Domestic violence didn't care that I was a 20-year-old honors college student with a full life ahead of me when I was called over and over in the middle of the night and manipulated into meeting my ex-boyfriend to have one last hug and have closure from our relationship that ended 3 months prior to this phone call. I ended the relationship 3 months prior because of escalating physical abuse. He was very emotionally and verbally abusive, and it started getting physical. And I was able to, with the help of the police, run away and break my silence. But I want to explain a little bit about how high school love, this was my high school boyfriend, can turn down such a dangerous and deadly path. So I want to go through just the dynamics of our relationship so you can understand how something like this happens. In the beginning, when we met, I was a junior, he was a senior at Clearwater High School. He was very sweet, charming, funny, tall. He was known for, his funny personality. He was very well liked. And we were your typical high school relationship, hanging out every moment we could and texting every moment we couldn't. I noticed, hindsight's 2020. I've really tried to break apart how could this happen. And I noticed that there was a change in our relationship and a shift when I started to prepare to graduate high school and move on to college. I was given a lot of scholarships, and he hated it. He did not want me to succeed ahead of him. I had all these plans, and he did not have all these plans. He would do anything to start belittling me and putting me down. He would call me names. He had a temper that would easily be set off with anything. And he just really, as I said, did not want me to succeed in any way and wanted to break me down. Of course, I didn't want to be treated this way, so I tried to break up with him. But that's when he said, as his girlfriend, I should be helping him, not abandoning him during his time of need. And if I was to leave, he was going to commit suicide. Of course, I was young. I didn't like the way he was treating me, but I also didn't want him to harm himself. So I agreed to stay. I sought out free mental health counseling, and he actually got involved in my church. He also wasn't like this all the time and was so sorry if he was to say anything or do anything. And since I was completely uneducated about the warning signs of domestic violence and the cycle of abuse, I confused this emotional and verbal abuse with him just being a jerk. I accepted this is just how men are. I also grew up in a home where violence, more arguing, yelling was a regular occurrence between my dad and brother. And this ultimately led to my family unit falling apart, a divorce. And so I just really never had a role model male figure in my life show me the type of love I deserved or even what a healthy relationship looks like. Therefore, the bottom line is I just did not understand my value or my worth. The relationship turned physically violent in the last 6 months or so of our relationship, and it started with a very simple push, but ended with his hands tightly wrapped around my throat in an attempt to strangle me. There were 4 incidents total, and I kept quiet about these because after he would hurt me, he would literally attempt suicide in front of me. There was self-harm, taking pills. One time he even jumped out of my car when I was going 50 miles an hour. He would do these things until I would be hysterically begging for him to stop, like swallowing pills, threatening to cut himself, all of these things until I would be begging him to not do it right in front of me. Even though he was just hurting and choking me, it was very twisted. He wanted to make himself appear the victim. And he would always have control of my keys and phone, couldn't get away, couldn't get for help, and he would also threaten that if I didn't calm down at that moment, he would murder my mother and my siblings. And he would tell me how he was going to do it, and he had no reason to live, and we would all be gone. So therefore, I was at that time a very smart, strong, independent girl, working full-time, in college full-time, but I felt completely trapped in this abusive relationship. I had everything going for me, but that was the biggest secret I was hiding, is nobody knew that I was being abused. I was trapped in this relationship for 2 years, as I said, before I finally was able to break free, run away, and call 911, and with the help of the police, they ended it with me. I thought I was free, but my nightmare was just beginning. Because what I didn't know at the time is that the period of time after leaving an abusive relationship is extremely dangerous and volatile, and when a majority of murders occur. There is no reason that if somebody's harmed you or in any way abused you, that you owe them a face-to-face apology or you owe them closure or a meetup of any kind. And I hope that you will help spread this message, especially to any youth and teens that you know. They always want that closure, that talk. Let's just figure this out. That's the most extremely dangerous and volatile time. If somebody feels they have lost everything, they are capable of anything. So in an abusive relationship, often this person feels like they are their everything. When you break that, that's when it usually escalates. Women, every day in our country, I'm horrified to say that 3 women are murdered every single day in the United States, on average, sometimes more. And women are 500 times more at risk after they leave. So as I said in the beginning, domestic violence is all about power and control. So once a woman stands up for herself and breaks that control, that's when it escalates. I was a naive young girl at this time that had no knowledge of domestic violence statistics. I didn't know that 1 in 3 teenagers, like myself, were in some form of abuse. If you didn't know that as well, with 1 in 3 women, it's 1 in 3 teenagers right now are in some form of abuse in their relationships. I didn't know that national statistics say that every 9 seconds in the United States, a woman is beaten. This equates to 10 million abuse victims across the country each year. I wish I knew I wasn't alone. And there's also a tool that could have saved my life. It's called the danger assessment. The danger assessment is a questionnaire that helps determine the level of danger an abused woman has of being killed by her partner. I use it in my advocacy now when I work one-on-one with a survivor who doesn't really understand the severity of the situation that she's in. It's a questionnaire that goes through steps of lots of times in an abuse you're in denial or blinded by the love. We can see it on the outside, especially as advocates. But it's a checklist that's an eye-opener for many. And I did one just as an example to look back about if somebody would to, thought of myself at 19 answering these questions. And I would have answered 18 out of 24 of them. That's how high a risk I was of being murdered. And I often think, if you think I would have thought this would happen, do you really think I would have walked outside to meet him? We need this tool across the country, and the DVCAC right now has their high-risk team working on implementing this project, and Commander McPike will tell you more about this very important project after my speech here. As I said, 18 out of 24. If only I knew, right? If only somebody would have put this in my hands. My whole life changed on January 24th, 2012 with that phone call. My ex went to court that morning from the battery charge from 3 months ago, and he decided that this would be the day he would set out to kill me. Although what he told me is that he called. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I ignored it. Why? You can't be talking to me anyways. I answered. I said, what do you want? He said, after everything we've been through, can you just give me a hug? I will leave you alone forever and never bother you again. He said he was in my area, and he started crying. It was pathetic. He said, we just need closure. And he was doing all he could to manipulate me and convince me to meet him. I had an exam the next morning at 8 a.m. in chemistry, and I felt that he would not stop calling, and him out of my life forever sounded pretty good. I ignored one of the most important gifts God gave me and every single one of you in this room. I ignored my intuition. That little voice inside you that whispers something's right or wrong. There's a reason that we all have this ability, and I hope that you will always follow it. I knew it was not right, but I was naive, young, and felt like I could just get this over with real quick, and I walked outside. I took my phone, keys, and pepper spray in case anything was to happen. I could spray them and run away. But as I said, I ignored it. And it's the biggest mistake of my life. So if I can offer you one piece of advice, you will always follow your intuition, your internal guide. There's a reason that we have that gift. But I walk outside. He was already standing next to his truck, and he reached his arms around me for the hug that he cried and begged for. But little did I know he already had a switchblade in his left hand. He flipped it open immediately, stabbed me in the back of the shoulder, Second one was the back of my neck. Third one was on the side of my face right here. And until the one hit the side of my face and my mouth filled with blood, I didn't even know what was happening. That began the fight for my life. And I was stabbed 32 times total with 2 knives, all while my mother slept inside the house. Miraculously, God had 2 angels nearby, teenagers, 17 and 18 years old. They were in the park across the street, and they heard me screaming. My angels, literally, my courageous teenage angels, ran over. The young girl called 911, and the young boy pulled him off me. They were both threatened with a gun and told to get out of here. It was not a real gun. He was told he was going to shoot them. And they ran away, but never out of eyesight. And on the entire time, she was on the phone with 911, and she's the only reason I'm here today. So a side note with that also, if you're ever in a situation where you hear something, see something, say something, stranger, a neighbor, a friend, anything, you will be the one to make the call. 911 might say, okay, we already have a call. But that's great. You at least tried, because it could be a matter of life or death for that person. This young girl is literally the only call that came through that heard me screaming. And they successfully dispatched 9 first responders there. And I'll spare you and myself from reliving the gruesome details of the attack as we enjoy our lunch. But I do want to go through the severity of my injuries so you can understand the depth of miracles I have experienced. There were 32 wounds total, as I said, 19 in my head, neck, and face, the rest in my arms and hands. My skull was fractured, my nose was broken, my teeth were knocked out, my facial nerve was severed, leaving with paralysis. I was given 12 units of blood overall, and I had my entire blood volume replaced twice. Due to the massive loss of blood, I also suffered a stroke in my cerebellum, and they said I may never be able to walk again without a cane, but here I am. Yeah, I know. Thank you. I flatlined 4 times on the table, but the trauma surgeon, Dr. Jeff Johnson, said that if I wasn't giving up, neither was he, and he worked for 3 hours to stabilize me and stop the bleeding. Rock bottom, where I fell, became the solid foundation upon which I rebuilt my life. I spent many weeks in the hospital and many months in outpatient therapy and counseling. I've had probably 10 or more surgeries to get where I am today. I had to learn how to walk again, talk again, use my hands, close my eyes, smile. I had to learn how to drive my car. I was basically an adult baby after all this happened. I've been on the ongoing journey of overcoming PTSD, but at the time, I knew I just wanted so badly to be the Melissa I was before. I wanted to get back to my job at the hospital where I was working. I wanted to get back into college to be a nurse like I wanted to be my whole life. But what I didn't know at the time is that when you go through something traumatic, it changes you. And I couldn't change what happened. All I could do was accept it. I couldn't close my eyes and make the scars disappear. I couldn't ignore the court case and the letters I was getting every single month that I had to show up. I couldn't ignore the calls from the media wanting to know the story from me. You can't change how others treat you or what they say about you. All you can change is how you react to it. And when something bad happens, you have 3 choices. You can let it define you, you can let it destroy you, or you can make the choice to rise above and let it strengthen you. And I made the decision that this attack was one day in my life, and it will never define me. My mom always told me that I was not saved to live an angry or bitter life, and I decided to turn my pain into purpose. I promise that you can overcome any obstacles as long as you don't lose hope and faith for better days, and you never give up. I promise that pain and hard times are inevitable, but they are only temporary. You are certainly stronger than you realize, and just because you have a bad day doesn't mean you have a bad life. I've told myself that many times through my journey. This is just a bad day, not a bad life. This is just a bad day, and guess what? The beautiful thing about life is you get to start over new tomorrow, and you have a fresh chance, and God gives us that gift every day. Sometimes people find themselves in a dark place, and we think that we have been buried. But in fact, we've been planted. My favorite analogy of all is that my abuser tried to bury me, but he didn't know I was a seed. I choose to grow from the dirt I was left in and follow wherever God leads me to blossom. The court case also felt like a never-ending, grueling journey, a 2-year process. So after leaving me, he attempted suicide, took pills and crashed his car into a gas station, but he was also saved, taken to the hospital, stomach pumped, and when he woke up, hands, feet cuffed to the bed, and was charged with first-degree attempted murder. He tried to plead incompetency, mental illness, all of this, but thankfully, I'm pleased to let you all know that on October 21st, 2013, he was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. Thank you. Thanks. And that was a defining moment in my life. I could no longer silence my inner voice telling me I was saved for something bigger. I had to let go of my plan and follow God's plan, meaning I had to take a huge leap of faith. I quit my job at the hospital, I changed my school path away from nursing, and I decided to become an advocate for the organization that helped me rebuild my life in Clearwater, Florida, called Hands Across the Bay. At Hands Across the Bay, where I proudly work now for the last 4 years, we are a privately funded organization that has a passion for prevention and awareness and education of our youth. We help rebuild the lives of survivors after leaving abusive situations in partnership with organizations such as the DVCAC. And I also get to go into schools, my biggest passion of all, and educate teens about the warning signs and the cycle of abuse. It all comes down to I wish I knew then what I know now, and I never want another young woman or man to go through the same. Domestic violence is an epidemic in our society, and the work of the DVCAC and Hands Across the Bay go hand in hand. Together, we are working tirelessly to raise awareness, educate communities, and shine a bright light to this dark and hidden, but completely preventable issue. Growing up, I never envisioned myself sharing my struggles openly to an audience. But as I said in the beginning, people start to heal the moment they are heard. And there are 4 reasons I continue to speak out and share my story. First, I share my story to be a voice for the victims who are still hiding in silence and fear, for those who have been emotionally beaten down by somebody who claims to love them. Please take my advice and reach out to the DVCAC if you are currently being abused. The second reason I share my story is for my survivor sisters. Our stories may be way different, from one to the next, but together we are stronger. I share my story for my survivor sisters who can speak publicly and those who cannot. Many women are walking the streets looking over their shoulder because their abusers are out, or they have to co-parent with their abusers. And I feel very blessed that mine is locked away for life and I can scream on the rooftops. So I will always speak for my survivor sisters who can and can't. And a lot of times when I meet other survivors, they want to immediately put a wedge between us that I've been through similar but not as bad as you. That kind of hurts my feelings because there's no comparison of which abuse is worse. And I've recently heard another analogy that really resonated with me. So, if I drowned in 60 feet of water and you drowned in 30 feet of water, does it really matter? Are we going to compare? So it's just important that all abuse is painful and the recovery is the same, and we can join forces together to be stronger. The third reason I speak out is for those who are unaware and do not understand the damaging and dangerous effects of domestic violence. For those who ask, why does she stay? Or, what did she do? Something had to have made him so mad, right? I'm here to tell you that is never simple. A woman just can't just leave. It is never as simple as just walking away. Women may stay because they're under full financial control. They may have fear of losing custody of their children. They may have grown up this way and think abuse is completely normal, and they may think that's all they deserve. Their religious beliefs may be stopping them from getting a divorce, or the threat of death is weighing over them, that if they were to leave, they will die. They will be murdered. Leaving an abusive relationship is terrifying, dangerous, and unpredictable, and why donating to DVCAC is vital for families to be able to create a safety plan and escape to a life of peace without and no more abuse, and rebuild their lives with advocates by their side. It's so important to have the advocates guiding and helping them take those steps. The fourth reason is the most important reason of all. I share my story to be a voice for our angels who have been forever silenced because their abuser succeeded in taking their life. I was very close to losing mine, my voice, my life, and but here I am. So my promise to all friends, families, mothers, grandparents, fathers of anyone who has been murdered, that I am carrying on their voice now as I speak to you today. I am carrying on their voice every time I speak in a high school, and I'm carrying on their voice every time I share my story in the news. It's not for me. This is much bigger than me. It's for them. So, and I would like to dedicate today also to Jackie. I would like to dedicate my speech to her. If you are currently being abused, or if something doesn't feel right with your partner, I hope that you will listen to your intuition and reach out to the DVCAC for assistance on how to safely end your relationship. Now, I'll bring us back up to the top, because I know and understand that not all men are this way, and there are a lot of wonderful men, like all of you in attendance today, supporting the DVCAC. And before I go into there, I just also want to promise to anyone who is in silence, it will not get better, and you can only give so many chances before you have to stand up for yourself and walk away. Everyone is deserving of a healthy, safe, nonviolent relationship. You should be with somebody who respects you, listens to you, loves you, and makes you feel safe. And as I said, I know not all men are this way. So in closing, there's a beautiful ending, or should I say new beginning, to my story that I'd like to share. And it's a silver lining that I never could have expected. In a twist of fate, this horrific night not only led me to find my purpose to work as an advocate, but it also led me to meet Cameron. He's this handsome man right here, okay? He was also a firefighter that was on my call. Cameron is the one that set up the landing zone for the helicopter and helped load me into it. We met 1 year after the attack, as I'm doing exactly what I am right now. I was the keynote speaker for our local domestic violence shelter, and they invited the first responders there that saved my life to meet me. And a few days later, Cameron reached out to my mom and I to invite us to dinner at the fire department, and the rest is history. No. Cameron and I got to talking, laughing, dating, learning about each other, and on March 4th of this year, Cameron and I tied the knot. And sometimes, yes, yay! Sometimes in the middle of ordinary life, love gives us a fairy tale. We are currently working on building our first home, and then we have dreams to start an alpaca therapy ranch where domestic violence survivors and the children, and also first responders, firefighters, police officers, anyone who's been through a lot of trauma can come and benefit from the healing and love of alpacas, which is kind of crazy. But someday you'll have to come down and visit us in Florida in our alpaca ranch. The dreams are in the making, but they're happening. I share this good news to remind you that you can make the choice to have a good, happy, positive life after trauma, and that there is life and love after abuse, but you first must seek help and heal and love yourself before you can be loved by somebody else. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you for supporting the DVCAC. Women often escape with nothing but the shirt on their back, completely broken self-esteem, and little to no hope for the future. The shelter is there to provide hope, healing, and safety. And with your donations, we're only, 13,000 more or so to go. Over 25,000 is what we need that to be. With your donations, you can help continue on the legacy of the DVCAC and help turn victims into survivors. So please, I encourage you to give from your heart, and I thank you for allowing me to open mine. Remember, my name is Melissa Dome Hill. This is my story. Please don't let it be yours. Thank you.
I think she deserves a standing ovation.
open-minded people.
The spirit of innovation.
Passion.
Action.
Rock and roll.
Cleveland.
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 Cleveland. Cleveland.
We are Cleveland.
We are Cleveland!
We are neighbors and best friends.
I love my sister.
My heart doesn't see race. Love is love.
Our family is no less than any other family.
Remember, my name is Melissa Domehill. This is my story. Please don't let it be yours. Thank you.
I think she deserves a standing ovation. Truly someone who broke the silence and broke the cycle. Melissa, God bless you. And good luck to you. Wow. Thanks to all of you who have entered your donation as we're helping to change lives. That number seems to be stuck over there at 11,800. And you see the names there. We appreciate it. I see some very, very kind donations. We have to keep it going. On any day in America, more than 20,000 phone calls go into domestic violence hotlines. 20,000. You can donate by check or credit card. Staff is there to assist you if you did not already text your donation. And we still got, well, not even half to our goal right now. So let's keep that thermometer moving up and reach our goal. Again, text the word healing to 56512. All right, our next speaker. He's been a police officer with the Cleveland Division of Police since June of '95. He's currently commander of the Bureau of Special Investigation. He's also going to speak on the Domestic Violence High-Risk Team Demonstration Initiative, which is a product, by the way, of the Department of Justice and the Office of Violence Against Women. Would you please welcome Commander James McPike.
Melissa, I would like to first thank you. I think I speak on behalf of everyone here that when we encounter someone with your courage to come and share your story with us, it kind of reconnects us to why we do what we do. So thank you. I am here to talk about the high-risk team that's taken place here in Cleveland, but I also want to talk about relationships and collaboration a little bit. You see, domestic violence is very prevalent in the city of Cleveland. In 2016, we had over 18,000 calls for service for domestic violence. And of those, we made almost 7,000 domestic violence police reports. So on behalf of Chief Calvin Williams and the Cleveland Division of Police, I want to thank each of you. Whether you're a judge or a prosecutor, an advocate, victim specialist, nurse, doctor, police officer, detective, or you're heavily involved or involved in domestic violence programs, thank you for all that you do on behalf of victims and survivors of domestic violence. Each of you in your own worlds can do awesome work for domestic violence victims and survivors. And each of you have a tremendous impact in someone's life. But I'm here to tell you, when we work together, when we work in collaboration, we can accomplish so much more. We are more powerful together. That is why the Cleveland Division of Police is committed to working in relationship with our community partners and our community members. Our relationship with the Domestic Violence and Child Advocacy Center is an example of this. And although we've worked together for many years, let me tell you about one program. For many years, the Cuyahoga County Witness Victim Service Center, the Domestic Violence and Child Advocacy Center, and the Cleveland Division of Police has worked to bring a special grant program to the city of Cleveland. On October 1st, 2016, we officially started the Domestic Violence Homicide Prevention Grant in Districts 1 and 5. This program had success in other cities in reducing domestic homicides, reducing violent domestics, and reducing calls for service for police officers. And as Melissa mentioned, it also involves a danger assessment. So every officer in District 1 and 5 was trained to administer a special danger assessment on every domestic violence run and every intimate partner run that they go on. It was specially tailored for law enforcement, and we refer to it as the DALE, which stands for Danger Assessment for Law Enforcement. It's 11 questions that helps us in the program determine what are the most violent cases, most likely to reoffend, and which ones would qualify for our high-risk team. And this is a very special team. These cases get extra special attention, they get wraparound services for the victim, and they hold offenders accountable. The offenders also get special attention, but in a different way. It includes police and advocates and probation and people from all kinds of agencies. We also have a special docket in Cleveland Municipal Court where these cases go in front of one judge, and everyone's received special training. It's a really neat program. 1 year in, we've taken in 653 cases, and so far, we have charged 487 individuals with various crimes. And more importantly, none of the cases that are part of the program have led to a domestic homicide. And these are victims, yeah, that's good. And these are victims that most likely have never received any kind of services in the past. The goal as we go forward is to expand this program through the entire Division of Police in the city of Cleveland. And this is one example of what we can do when we work together, and that we significantly and positively affect the lives of DV victims and survivors and hold offenders accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Commander. You know, I'm off script here a little bit, but I would like to ask all the police officers, officers of the court, judges, victims advocates to stand right now, and let's give them all a round of applause. What do you think? Keep it going. They do this day in and day out. Now, each year the DVCAC recognizes individuals, groups, or companies who have contributed to either raising awareness of child abuse and domestic violence, taking a stand against it, or showing the resilience and perseverance after experiencing it. Our first award today is the Power of One Award. Using her clinical experience with families from domestic violence households to set the foundation for her research, the overreaching goal of her work has been to continue to the optimal development of children who've been exposed to intimate partner violence by identifying risk and protective factors that can be translated into interventions. Children exposed to violence are more likely to attempt suicide, abuse drugs and alcohol, run away from their home, engage in teenage prostitution, and commit sexual assault crimes. Dr. Holmes' research contributes to child welfare knowledge and is focused on informing direct practitioners on interventions and reducing the negative consequences by IPV exposure. We are proud to present this afternoon the Power of One Award to Dr. Megan Holmes. Our next award being presented is the Courage Award. On July 10, 2005, Mary Ann Baker became a victim of domestic violence from her former husband, who was physically abusive as he slammed her head against a kitchen cabinet, then tried to choke her. Well, she managed to get free, run to the neighbors for help. For the next several years, she found herself immersed in another world, doing things she never imagined. Fighting for full custody of her 5-year-old daughter, testifying before court-appointed psychologists as well as judges, requesting and renewing civil protection orders, speaking with support groups, facing her abuser at his deposition, then reading a victim impact statement to a full courtroom. Well, in April of 2007, Mary Ann was awarded full custody of her daughter and set a new precedent by getting her civil protection order renewed twice. Mary Ann is forever grateful to those who helped, like Lundy Bancroft, acclaimed author on domestic violence, and Diane Schwartz, author of Whose Face is in the Mirror. She's also grateful to Shar Williams, DVCAC's retired justice system advocate, her family, her priests, friends, attorneys, and God, who helped her along the way. We are proud to present the Courage Award to Mary Ann Baker. Our next award is the Community Award. There are individuals that embody the spirit of community service and social responsibility. They recognize their unique role in society, as well as their ability to make our communities a safer place and a better place. Commander McPike is a person who has made significant contributions to the implementation of the domestic violence high-risk team, working in partnership with the DVCAC and other organizations. He's also been very involved with the Keys for Deaf Access program, which has implemented resources and safety planning for victims of domestic violence for the deaf community. We are proud to present the Community Award to Commander Jim McPike. All right, I got to do another pitch here. We got to move that thermometer up here. Please support our justice system advocacy program by texting the word healing. Can't say that enough. 56512. As you can see, we're just over $13,000. We have a way to go. We thank you for your support. Please know that every donation, whether it's $1, doesn't matter. Every donation helps. From $1 on up, you're making a difference. The staff is available to collect your check or credit card donations using the envelope on the table if you are not one of the tech savvy. I know there's a few of you out there that are still not into the smartphones, but nonetheless, we'll find a way to take your money, okay? I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our speaker, Melissa Dome Hill. Let's give her a round of applause again. And she's enjoying her cheesecake right now. Plus our chairs, Betty Burns, Karen Teig, Terry Hannah Ween, our honorary chair, Steve Dettelbach, our honorary guests, and all of you for supporting the Domestic Violence and Child Advocacy Center. Thank you so much. Break that cycle. And keep on donating.